is a fact that should unsettle you. George Orwell's Animal Farm has been adapted for the screen 3 times. 3 different directors, 3 different studios, 3 different eras. And in all 3 adaptations, every single one of them, the bleak, devastating, deliberately hopeless ending that Orwell wrote has been changed. Each time, the animals win. And here's where it gets interesting. Because each of those 3 institutions, the people who funded and shaped those adaptations, had a specific, documentable, ideological reason to need the animals to win. Pattern and coincidence both fall short as explanations. This is the story of Animal Farm happening, in real time, in Hollywood boardrooms and CIA conference rooms across 70 years of filmmaking history. The pigs won on the farm, and won again in every adaptation. And the 2026 version, directed by Andy Serkis and distributed by Angel Studios, is simply the latest chapter of a story that Orwell, I think, would have found bitterly, darkly satisfying. Let's set the stage with what George Orwell was actually doing when he wrote Animal Farm in 1943. He was writing a political pamphlet for adults with deadly, serious intent, so precise and so damning that 4 publishers refused it for being too honest. Britain was in the middle of World War II. Stalin was an ally, and Orwell was writing a story that said, plainly, that the Soviet Revolution had completed its conversion from liberation to totalitarianism. The novella was rejected by Victor Gollancz, rejected by Jonathan Cape, whose editor was reportedly pressured by a British government official, rejected by T.S. Eliot at Faber and Faber, who wrote that the story's ending lacked a more positive point of view. It was finally published in 1945, after the war ended and Stalin's alliance was no longer politically inconvenient to critique. The point is, Animal Farm was always a story that powerful institutions tried to suppress or revise before it reached the public. Now, the story itself. A group of farm animals, inspired by a dying boar's dream of liberation, overthrow their human farmer and establish a new society. The guiding principle: all animals are equal. The 7 commandments are painted on the barn wall. The revolution, at least at its inception, is genuine. The pigs accumulate power gradually. They rewrite the commandments incrementally, always with an explanation, always with a justification. By the end, only one commandment remains. All animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others. And in the novella's final image, the animals look through the farmhouse window and watch the pigs and the humans dining together. The creatures outside look from pig to man, and from man to pig, and from man to pig to man again, but already it was impossible to say which was which. Orwell's subject was bigger than the Soviet Union. He was describing a mechanism, a process by which institutions that begin with genuine idealism accumulate power and then use that power to serve themselves, while rewriting the story of how they got there. That final image is the thesis, the central argument the entire book exists to deliver. Now, 1954. By this point, Animal Farm had sold millions of copies. It was one of the most widely read political texts in the post-war world. Specifically, the CIA's Covert Action Wing wanted a film adaptation they could use as a Cold War propaganda. They had a nickname for their strategy of using global products to influence global opinion. They called it the Mighty Wurlitzer, after the famed instrument. Animal Farm was the perfect instrument. But there was a problem: the ending. The CIA secretly purchased the rights through a front company and commissioned a British animation studio to produce the film, and they gave very specific notes about what needed to change. First, the film removes the humans from the final scene. In Orwell's version, pigs and humans become indistinguishable. The CIA found this unacceptable. The image implies that Western systems produce the same outcome as the systems they oppose, so the humans disappear. The pigs become the sole villains. Second, the film invents a counter-revolution. Animals unite and overthrow the pigs. Hope is restored. The CIA needed audiences to believe that oppressive regimes could be overthrown, so the animals win. Third, the film eliminates sympathy for Snowball. The possibility of a good version of the revolution is removed entirely. Now, look closely at what they did. They took a story about an institution rewriting the rules to serve its own interests, and they rewrote the rules to serve their own interests. They became Squealer. The 1999 adaptation is quieter. It shows the regime collapsing under its own weight. The farm degrades. The pigs turn on each other. It carries a sense of exhaustion. It avoids Orwell's ending. It comes closer than the 1954 version did, And perhaps that's why it's the least remembered. It withholds catharsis. And now, for the reason we're all here today, we move on to the 2026 film. Andy Serkis's Animal Farm lands at Angel Studios, a company built around stories where light defeats darkness. So, the story changes. The film introduces Lucky, a young piglet who serves as the audience's moral center. He is invented for this adaptation. Orwell's story refuses to provide a hero. Lucky exists because the structure requires him to exist. The film builds toward a counter-revolution. Napoleon falls. The animals win. Serkis explains this by saying he wants younger audiences to have hope, to question what they should do next time. This introduces a fundamental shift, because the question Animal Farm actually asks runs deeper than what should we do next time. The real question is there a next time? Or does power corrupt every revolution from within? Orwell's answer is brutal. The structure wins. Lucky avoids that question entirely. If the story becomes a good individual defeating a bad one, the problem dissolves into the personal. And personal problems always have solutions. Orwell specifically refused that. So here is the argument. Animal Farm is unadaptable because the kind of institution required to adapt it is structurally incompatible with what it is saying. A deeper problem than darkness. A major film requires an audience. An audience requires resolution. Resolution requires catharsis. And catharsis requires the story to end in a way that feels complete. Animal Farm is meant to leave you with something unresolved. That tension is the point. The CIA had a reason to change the ending. Angel Studios had a different reason. The mechanism behind both is identical. An institution reshaping a story to serve its own needs, which is exactly what the story is about. Every adaptation becomes a new chapter of Animal Farm. Hey, if you're drawn to stories about revolutions, institutions, and the mechanisms behind them, be sure to check out my video on Andor, right over here. Let's return to what Orwell actually trusted us with. That final image, pigs and men indistinguishable, was written to transfer responsibility to the reader. The discomfort is supposed to leave the page and enter the world. When adaptations resolve the story, they remove that burden. They convert responsibility into closure. A question, once answered, surrenders its power to keep being asked. I want to end with something worth sitting on. The 2026 Animal Farm opened on May 1st, May Day, a day that began as a labor protest and became, over time, a celebration absorbed into the very system it once opposed. A protest turned into a ceremony, a revolution turned into ritual. The date itself is a small animal farm, and on that date, a film about the corruption of revolution opened in theaters, with a happy ending, with a hero, with a victory. The creatures outside looked from pig to man, and from man to pig, and from man to pig to man again. Orwell trusted us to finish the sentence. 70 years later, we keep letting someone else finish it for us. Thanks for watching, and stay copacetic.